Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode, episode 3 of Healthy Planet, Healthy You. And today we are going to discuss sustainable fashion and personal care, which ties in with our Pharmacy 360 element of the environment. So I'm going to invite Pat Kane to join us. She's an award too, and she'll be tuning in any moment now.
Hello.
Welcome. Hello.
Hi, Liz. How are you?
I am great, and I'm so excited to delve into this topic because I think a lot of people might see Mars Pharmacy talking about fashion and saying, well, what's that got to do with our health? But you and I know it does, and it's a really important topic that I'm excited to learn from you today, because you are the person in the know in this area. Um, so I know people are tuning in on their lunch break, and you're so welcome today. So we'll delve straight into it, will we? Just get
Let's do it.
yeah. So like sustainable fashion, what is it? What does it mean?
Well, sustainable fashion is really trying to make more. We're only trying to make more mindful choices about how we go. On all things fashion and choices we make out there. So, for instance, the best thing you can possibly do when it comes to fashion today is to really wear what you already have. I am pretty sure we all have a lot already on our wardrobes. There's always something that we need to replace, something we need to find, something new. I get that. But it's really making the most of what we already have, and not to bore you with statistics or anything like that. But today, on planet Earth, we have enough clothes to dress the next 6 generations to come. So that is a lot of clothing, right? So
Mhm.
there are several ways one can go about fashion, and trying to make more mindful choices, I guess. So you could be looking at, for instance, buying secondhand or pre-loved. I suppose that's a nicer term for some. You can go about, looking at mending and, trying to upcycle what you already have. Maybe you want this top to have short sleeves, so you can go to a seamstress or whoever, you go to fix up your clothes. So you can do that. You can borrow. For a special occasion, you can rent, you can swap with friends, things that no longer serve a purpose to myself, I'm going to pass on to someone else and vice versa.
Mhm.
Like a huge fan. I can't tell you how much of, throwing on your WhatsApp groups, the girls or your friends or whatever, your family members, and saying, look, I have these, I no longer need or want. Anyone would be interested,
Mhm.
because why not? Why
Yeah.
not?
Yeah, people
So
have
I love
makers
that.
groups, even like, yeah, any sort of local chats, just trying to pass things on rather than just throw them out. And,
That's
we're
it.
great at talking about doing a clear out, but where do you send it? I know a lot of people struggle with this. There's clothing banks that are full to the brim, and where do they
Mm,
even go to? It's
yeah.
a tough area.
I personally would steer clear from the clothing banks.
Mhm.
I would be a huge fan of charity shops. I myself, for full transparency, I'm a board member with Vision Ireland, which is the former NCBI. So, I see firsthand the work that charities do day in, day out to sort through everything they receive and price them fairly and, selling them to someone else and
Mhm.
keeping that fashion in circulation. So that garment. So I find that really important for us to keep in mind because charity shops are breaking that stigma that, it's old clothes, it's smelly and, stuff that's not quite nice as an experience for the
Yeah.
shopper. So I get that. But now they're really up in their game. And I would invite anyone watching us, joining us today, watching this later on, to really give a charity shop a go next time they're looking for something for themselves or even a gift, I would dare I say.
And I think the whole concept of it has the mental kind of the way people look at charity shops that has definitely shifted because it's seen as vintage or cool or trendy. It's people are really
Unique. It's so
proud.
unique.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
it's
there's
so
a real
unique.
pride in wearing, like, where did you get that? Picked it up in the charity shop. It's actually really on trend, and we talk about style and fashion. That is like the current fashion. It's amazing.
Exactly, exactly.
Mm,
You can get so creative. It's you're hardly going to find someone else wearing the same thing you're wearing. So that's absolutely a way to go about that. Now, some
mm,
people will say to us, but I really want something new.
mm.
Oh, but I got a new job, or it's my birthday, or whatever it is. I really want to celebrate with a new piece. And that's okay.
Yeah.
There's always going to be room for new, like, absolutely. We're not, like looking at the world through rose tinted glasses. We know very well how the machine works.
Yeah.
So, in that case, what we would say is like try to support a local brand that
Hmm.
is promoting slow fashion. We have an incredible array of brands in Ireland that, make beautiful things, brands that make beautiful things, designers, creatives, and they make whatever it is they are making in a more conscious way.
Yeah.
They are trying to use better materials. They are certainly looking after their supply chain. So
Hmm.
if you're thinking of the people they work with, the seamstresses, how they get paid, their work conditions and whatnot, so like try to support a local brand if possible. And
Yeah.
again, look for materials that are less harmful. We spoke about that last week when we were talking about microplastics. And, the same goes for clothing. When you look at materials like your polyester, your nylon, your, what else? Viscose, depending on how it's made, all of those materials, they contain microplastics, which means, the more you wash that fabric, the more microplastics it will release over its lifetime. So it's not that it will stop and wash it away and that's it, done. No, it's forever and ever until the end of its life cycle.
And the
And it's really
microplastics.
hard to avoid that. It's
Yeah.
really hard
And the
because
microplastics end up in the water system, and then we consume the food at the end, and it's back in us, and it never ends.
exactly.
That's what
Yeah,
today's all about, education, isn't it? Just to why should we think about these things before we decide to consume? It's conscience led consuming.
immersion. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Absolutely. Like it's all connected. When we think of like, but it's only clothes. No, it's not. As you said, there's a cycle there that could potentially happen, and it is actually happening. I was reading a study this week that an average American of 39 years old, average American, has consumed an average of 11 kg. So that is like, say, 23, 24 pounds of plastics so far in life. Yeah,
wow.
during those 39 years. So could you imagine stacking a pile of, you know, 11 kgs of bags, plastic bags, and then eating that? It's
Yeah,
crazy. And then the same research was saying that, the harms of microplastics in our bodies are not quite understood yet.
no.
So, which is terrible. But like it begs the question, you're seeing the rise of so many different cancers and hormone disruptions and whatnot. And, that equation is very complicated for us to process. So there has to be something there.
Well, we can see the EU, like there's new regulations in place only this year that are taking things like BPA chemicals out of food, um,
Yeah.
away from like food packaging. So they would have been found on the inside of cans or in a lot of packaging that would wrap our
Yeah.
food, and they have discovered all these. They're called endocrine disrupting chemicals, and when we talk about endocrine, it's our hormones, it's and things that can affect our fertility, our menstrual cycles. Some of these chemicals nearly mimic estrogen, so the body gets very confused. It can end up affecting how our metabolism works, our thyroid. It knocks onto
Yeah.
so many things, and like seeing that shift, because the most common way we get those in our bodies is by eating our food. So the EU have hammered down on this, and they're in place at the moment. Over the next year or so, they are getting those chemicals out of our food chain. But there's not as high a risk when it comes to textiles, but they are still learning and we're still learning. So these chemicals are not something we want to consume. And the more we
Yeah.
are aware of them and can make informed choices, why we should maybe look for, like, what materials would you recommend someone that's going shopping to look for?
I mean, ideally, we would be looking at natural materials, like not man-made fibers. So again, we spoke about polyester as a very good example. Very hard for us to escape because even when you go to a fast fashion chain, let's say like Zara, and you look at like linen trousers, okay? I was at one of those the other day. I'll go in for a lot of pictures and research because just nosy. But you know, it was like polyester, the tag, and then you turn it around, it was like polyester, and sorry, it said linen, and then you turned the label around, and it was like linen blend. It was
Hmm.
like 50% polyester, 50% linen. So
Wow.
yeah, it's why? Because it's cheaper, it's easier, definitely easier to iron.
Hmm.
Yeah, when you're washing it. So I get it, but complicated, right? Kind of misleading for the client, for the customer. So I think like it is tricky because polyester particularly is on everything. If you look at nylon, gym clothes and whatnot, there's not one apparel like for gym that's made from linen or
Yeah.
hemp. You know, like there are organic cotton, some things, but when it comes to performance and sweat and it's not ideal, unfortunately. So hopefully there's something out there in the making. Hopefully. But
Yeah.
for now, if you're looking for your day-to-day clothes, if you go for organic cotton, less pesticides, less water in the production. If you look at, like even some of the fibers that are very innovative, there's pineapple leather, like if you're avoiding like that pleather, which is basically plastic fake leather, that sort of thing, very interesting. I've seen like lots of coconut-based fibers. I've seen obviously hemp. I've seen, obviously cotton, your linen, etc. So all those things are very good.
Hmm.
But again, are they practical?
Yeah. And then there's the whole
No.
argument of these terms like sustainable fashion, but ethically sourced and sustainably sourced. There
Yeah,
is a difference there because more ethically sourced, we're thinking of the people who have made the clothes. And if you're buying
correct.
something that is costing you €2, we know that someone down the line is not getting paid a lot
Yeah.
for that. And so it's
I love that you brought it up, Liz, because I think it's a very important topic for us to go over. At times we really think sustainability, it's immediately we connect that with nature, with pollution, waste, dirty waters and, plastics and recycling. All these things come to mind immediately. Why? Because that's the sexy side of sustainability, isn't it? It's the
yeah,
one that's easy to sell and whatnot. Less well, it is controversial, but it's not on a human level. When it comes to the social element of sustainability, as you're talking about, that element of, the people who made my clothes, who made my clothes?
mm,
Who is out there making those things? I don't know. Like we have no visibility. There's no transparency. And that's one of the big claims. Just last night, news came out of a very expensive Italian brand that's part of a very powerful fashion group in the world, and that they are just not doing a good enough job when it comes to supply chain supervision,
yeah,
which means that they are finding people being extremely underpaid for a jumper, a wool jumper that will cost at the end to its final customer €2,000.
wow,
So, and the same happened with the big Christian Dior last year. People were making those bags for 40 quid and they were being sold for thousands. So what is happening here?
yeah,
So all these big brands, they are now like being put under the microscope because that social element is so important. You can't, there's, I find it really hard to reconcile the idea of wearing a t-shirt that says empowered or feminist when there's a woman on the other side making pennies to sew that
mm,
together, or stitch that together for me. Do you
yeah,
know? I find it very hard. So absolutely engage with the brands, start asking like, where are your factories? Social media, once again, is a great thing because you can engage with brands. You can make noise, and brands, I suppose, tend to listen when they realize, okay, this is a big enough question that's been thrown at us. So, but do engage with the brands as much as you can. If they have physical shops, go out there and ask,
Yeah.
because we have to. It's not right, isn't it?
And there's that idea of quantity over quality as well, because sometimes it's like, well, I'm on a budget, cost of living has gone up, like I can't afford the expensive brands, or it seems like a lot of money for, a jumper, a t-shirt, when you can get it for the quarter of a price of the price in a
Yeah.
bigger fast fashion brand. But
The
how do you
the
argue
difference
that?
there, Liz. No, but the difference there is that the folk that is struggling to buy clothes, they are not the ones helping those brands grow and thrive.
Mm,
So I always try and separate really clearly the argument when it comes to this, because we're not talking to someone who is struggling to put food on the table and dress their children.
yeah,
Like these guys, they're not buying every week 40 quid as the average Irish person is when it comes to clothing. So that's absolutely not the person we're talking to. We are talking to those they have a little bit of money to spare, a bit of change in their pockets, and they're going out there just as retail therapy, just because they saw someone on social media wearing something and they want to
mm,
replicate that look.
yeah,
That is where the problem lies. So I think we need to be very, very clear that there's two different groups, and
yeah,
by no means, if that's all you can afford, folks, that's all you can afford.
yeah.
You know.
We're not trying to put guilt on anybody. We're trying to actually just, educate around the positive sides of why we think about slower fashion, reusing, upcycling, and start that conversation with your colleagues, with your families, with your friends.
Exactly that. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly that.
yeah.
So
Um,
you mentioned, sorry, go on, let you go on. I get
no, no,
carried
no, no.
away.
Honestly, you keep going there.
No, you just mentioned also that just going back to the health connection, again, one of these really big ultra fast fashion brands that came out over the past few years online was caught, adding very heavy chemicals to children's clothing.
Wow.
So that has to be harmful for kids. And
Yeah.
once again, it's only when you start reading, you start asking, start investigating that you find out. So I know it's not ideal. I know ideally we would have everything up front. We know what we're dealing with, but that's not how the world spins nowadays. So I would 100%, you want to invest, use your hard-earned money to buy clothes for your children from brands ABC. Have a look at their practices, have a look at what's being said online.
Hmm.
Now we have a plethora of information in front of us when it comes
Yeah.
to reviews and articles and whatnot. So do a bit of research. I know, again, not practical, not ideal, but if you can, I would advise people to do that.
And if you're giving your top tips for if someone's looking at a label, like they're wondering whether to buy this item in a shop and they want to have a look at the label, what kind of the top two things you would recommend someone to look at?
Well, certainly, like where do my clothes come from?
Hmm.
The farther away they come from, obviously, the further away, the more carbon emissions, so the more footprint they generate, which means obviously that clothing, that element, the garment is already, heavy enough when it comes to pollution and whatnot. So that's a big
Yeah.
one. So if you can, choose local.
Yeah.
That's always going to be my go-to.
Yeah.
Again, it's probably more expensive because it's made, smaller scale and whatnot. And you're literally probably talking to the person who make your clothes when you're talking to the owners,
Yeah.
the designers. But you're buying something that will really last.
Yeah.
So I think that's number one. And then, of course, composition. So what materials are we dealing with? I would look into how to wash it, make sure that you know and you follow the instructions, because one thing or not, these guys know what the material they're using to make a garment and how to look after that material. What else could I look into? Recyclability, but again, very hard to recycle textiles. Very, very hard. When it comes to recycling textiles, we're looking at, companies that pay peanuts to buy your old garments and potentially recycle them. So I would say try to keep things in circulation as much as possible. Don't necessarily fall for that recycle symbol on a garment because it will hardly be recycled.
Yeah.
Yeah, so these are a few of the things, I guess.
Yeah, even cutting up old t-shirts for like using them for cleaning around the house, find all these
Exactly,
and
exactly.
use them.
I love stuffing cushion covers with old clothes.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
Nobody will ever look into your cushions.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Why not? Why not? No, it's if someone is listening here and they want kind of one thing to take away from this, or we want to challenge our listeners to, really think about this. Like for me, I'd be recommending charity shops from talking to you. Like, donate to charity shops if you want to do a clear out, but also shop in them. You're putting money back to a really good cause and you're keeping it in your local community and you're passing on an item that has served you and say thank you and move it on to someone who might need it.
exactly. That's absolutely a brilliant option. I love it. But I would also, and again, I'm going to go back to the past two lives we did. And, the recommendation there was to look into your lifestyle
Mm,
and figure it out what you actually need, you
yeah,
know, and forget trends, forget what the famous and rich and famous are wearing, and try and concentrate on what you need. Like, what's your style like? Look at your wardrobe. Certain things, if you give me something yellow, it's not going to work for me. So why do I have a yellow top sitting there? Let me pass that on.
yeah,
Maybe a charity shop, maybe whatever else. I don't know, a friend, as I said, your WhatsApp groups, whatever, vintage, Depop, sell online. I love selling. I love Depop personally. I'm a Depop gal. So finding ways to get rid of that in a conscious manner. So we are all very different. So I feel like looking at your lifestyle, what you need and what you don't, and start, curating a selection of garments and elements there that will really work for you, because that will generate less waste. You're
mm,
not going to have stuff sitting on your wardrobe for the years to come,
yeah.
and you might even make a bit of money out of that. So
Nice.
there you go.
That's all good. And then we're going to tie it back to our health just before we finish as well. And just to consider that some of these microplastics in the clothing, they can, whether they seep in from after washing, they're going into the water system, then it ends up recycling back to us and eventually we consume it. But also, certain textiles made of certain microplastics, to just be aware that there is emerging research on this, of the harms that they can pass on to us, from affecting our immune system to hormonal disruption. It's an area of research to just keep an ear to the ground about it. It's very current, and we're all learning as we go on this. But I think the more natural products we can use, the better. And if we can reduce our consumption slightly, I mean, it's a tough climate economically at the moment. So if we can keep that, do we really need it before we buy it, just to question that conscious consumerism. That would be a good thing to take away from this as well. And because it's very easy online, with a click of a button, someone puts up a style, or there's an outfit on Love Island and suddenly there's an ad for that dress and you can have it within a day or two. Like, it's
True.
just so fast that the trends are changing so quickly with that as well. So it's not really unique anymore. So as you said, don't be afraid to be you and find your own style and wear what you want and what you feel is right. And I think there is, like, the younger generation are very, very cool with this as well. I think there's a real trend,
True.
like being aware and being really proud of wearing something vintage, or.
I agree. I agree. I think they're brilliant. And
Mhm.
it's really us, like, I suppose, stuck in the middle, that need to learn more, because we are the generation that, we were the first ones to see that fast fashion
Mm,
explosion, like your 30, 40 year olds, even 50. When we were already big enough to know, and we're like, okay, this is amazing, but wait, is it?
yeah,
You know, so I feel like we now need to start asking the questions like, do I actually need this?
yeah.
You know?
And if
So yeah.
be enough clothes on the planet for the next 6 generations of
Six.
people.
Mhm.
Like, if we don't slow down production, where does that end, and where are we going to end up, and what's happening to our planet? And we're hearing of a lot of clothes from clothing banks ending up being shipped to a country that doesn't want them, and it's charitable, but it's actually put in a dump, and they don't want it, and it's seeping into the sea. It's like, raise that conversation, think about it, allow yourself to think about it, because it will help you with those choices when you're in the moment about to buy something. It's good to be aware of it.
Absolutely. That's perfect. That's
Yeah.
it. It's just mindful choices.
Yeah. Before we finish, is there anything you'd like to end? Because I on with regards to personal care products, because we actually kind of stayed on fashion there. Really get into care products.
Listen, personal care, we did cover a little bit last week, I suppose,
Yeah.
when we spoke about microplastics. Personal care products is one of those that, again, we're so different. We have different habits, we have different skin types, even, or hair, or whatever. So I feel like let's find what works for ourselves, but also let's try and look at the ingredients, at the labels, and try and understand what it is that's in there. I'm a huge fan of brands like Lush, and then there's loads of Irish brands doing incredible work like Ground, Seabody. I know you guys stock lots of them, which is
Mm.
fantastic. And, in there you will find a natural product that works, smells amazing, beautiful packaging, conscious enough packaging, because we're looking at glass in its majority.
Mm-hmm.
In glass, you can recycle glass forever and ever.
Yeah.
So, so that sort of thing, looking for products that are less harmful for the planet, for sure, when it comes to packaging and ingredients, and then obviously positive enough for ourselves. Fantastic. That would be my 2 cents.
Yeah. Brilliant. Brilliant. And yeah, reusable, recyclable, and even things like,
Refillable if you can find. Yeah,
yeah,
refillable.
and things like parabens free, like really looking for those things.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Like even if you go to some of the refuel stores in Ireland today, like there's one in Rathmines called the Good Neighbor, for example, they offer a range of shampoo, conditioners, body moisturizers, you name it, all refillable and all good for you, good for the planet.
Yeah.
Very much vegan, made from natural materials, not tested on animals, and all the good things. So I would 100% recommend you to try something like that.
Yeah.
You can buy as much or as little as you want, and try, see what happens, see if that's for you. But certainly, like, not only looking at yourself anymore, we're looking at, as I say, the greater good, the big picture here.
Yeah, brilliant. I just see a comment there. One lady says they have a scheme in work where they can swap items and absolutely anything at all. So they donate something and swap something. I think that's brilliant. Like, why don't we all try
Wonderful.
bring that into our workplace? It would be such a brilliant bring forward, and it would be fun as well. You could do it once a month
So fun.
shop. Like, I know I've loads of dresses. I was offering them to someone in work they were going to a wedding, and I just would get such a thrill out of the dress getting a day out, because like there's no point of just sitting in the wardrobe there. So
Agreed.
there and enjoy what we have, because we have so much. Like, we are so lucky. But I think, like, you get such a joy and a thrill from sharing it and seeing someone else enjoy it as well. So to kind of break the ice on that one, it's a great idea. So thanks, Irene, for sharing that with us.
It is gorgeous. I visited the factory of a place called Ireland's Eye Knitwear, and it's a knitwear company here in Dublin.
Yeah,
And they have these gorgeous little corner that is a swap corner. And again, like that, you can bring anything and take anything. I
yeah,
think it's really cool. Really
yeah.
cool.
Brilliant, brilliant. No, I love that. Well, look, that is, I think, us wrapped up for today. Next Tuesday, same time, we'll be back, and we'll be talking about the healing benefits of nature and all its brilliant health benefits, but also we'll discuss eco anxiety, which is a term that a lot of people will be familiar with, but some people won't. But it's a real topic, like, causes a lot of stress, anguish, um, especially for the younger generations. And what fears of climate change, what's happening to our planet, and how do we make a difference? But as we keep saying,
Exactly.
Small steps make bigger impacts, and we just need to start a little trend like that lovely swap shop and work, and roll with it, and it'll filter out.
No doubts. Thanks so much, Liz.
Yeah. Thank you.
Lovely.
I'll speak to you next week. Thank you, everyone,
Take
for
care.
listening.
Talk to you soon.
Bye bye.
Bye.